Hello viewers, once again, here I am with another replay, specifically from my friend in Infinity Gaming's Harbinger. This time he's playing the orange Protoss in the lower left corner, and his opponent is the red Terran, once again, Zor. So we are seeing probably what seems to be a rematch between these two, and we may see some different strategies. We are on Xel'Naga Fortress, so the strategies will be different from the last replay that I showed. One thing to note is the fact that they are not really on uneven positions, so to speak. It is a 3-player map, and in fact, it seems like Zor was planning to go ahead and set his waypoint all the way across the map. His next unit would immediately be his scouting unit. Harbinger is going to scout at the same time, so it seems as though Harbinger will probably get that scout off first. Zor continuing to wall off like you typically see Terrans do. Nothing too fancy, nothing too extravagant between these players. Now, it's up to Harbinger to really decide what he wants to do against a Terran opponent. He could go for a 3-gate fast expand, a 3-gate robo, something along those lines, but right now he can only throw down that initial gateway. Now, Zor, a lot of times with Terrans, I have been strangely losing in MMM builds because of the fact that my Colossi get focused so fast. That's actually something that a lot of good Terran players should know, to focus down those Colossi. In the last match between these two, you saw a fast Colossi for Harbinger, and he had so many charged Zealots that the Marauders just couldn't do damage against the distant Colossus. And seized better expansions, things along that nature. Zor is going to go ahead and scout inside Harbinger's base, and notice a quick assimilator, so he can assume that there will be some typical warp gate or robotics play coming up. Probably nothing along the lines of an expansion, but enough to get that cybernetics core doing its thing. Now, a Marine is going to be brought out from Zor's barracks. Once again, no big surprise there, but he is going for a refinery, so you may see fast Marauders for Zor, and they will be very effective against Protoss, as they normally are, especially in the early game. One thing to note, that cybernetic score is almost finished. Now, Harbinger has gone past 50 gas, so he will continue to mine, and he in fact goes for another assimilator. So he's definitely not going for some kind of 4-gate rush. A lot of times you see a single gas used for that, and then after you've established 4-gate, then you'll go into that additional gas. Now, a factory going down for Zor. So, due to the fact that he got that early gas, he could be going for some kind of mech play, or he may be going for the dreaded 1-1-1 build for some Banshee harassment on this map that is somewhat viable due to the fact that that rush distance is actually shorter. And there was some chrono boost being used on the warp gate, so that may be effective. Harbinger is going to send his zealot around his base once just to make sure there are no secret little buildings or workers hidden around. Pretty smart play. Now a Twilight Council going down. Now that's actually pretty fast and early. You don't see the Twilight Council go that fast, so he may be going for some kind of Stalker Rush with Blink. Zor is going to go ahead and keep that supply depot to the outside just to detect anything coming from the air, or if any units decided to come into this little area here and put down a proxy pylon, which should not be a very smart position for it. Now a hot swap going on, so it seems like Zor is going to go for fast Hellions. I don't see Hellions too often against Protoss. But with that blue flame, they may be able to do some damage against the early gateway units. Harbinger has sieged this Xel'Naga tower, so he will be able to see any units coming down to cause some aggression. A second gate and now a third gate are going to go down for Harbinger. So he is going to get the 3-gate build for that going, and he is also going for Blink. So he is going to finish warp gate at around that time. He's waiting for that to open up his gateway, so you will see some quick Blink. That'll be very useful if he manages to somehow get his units up. Now, I don't know how effective Blink will be against the Hellions incoming. He hasn't scouted them at all, but the Hellions are now out on the field. They will do some damage. No expansion scouted. The Zealots gonna get a little too close, but those Stalkers can do some better damage as well. Blink is almost finished as these 2 gates are complete. More Stalkers on the way, able to focus back these Hellions. That's pretty interesting to see. These Hellions, not the most predictable choice, but that Zealot is going to tank some damage, and ooh, that Hellion is going to get away with just 20 HP. 3 gates now operational, is able to warp in 1 unit. Now, it'll be interesting to see what he goes for next. It seems like Zor is going for... Ooh, he did go for a starport and a tech lab, so you will see some Banshees coming up shortly. That'll be interesting to see if he decides to be aggressive with those. Now, Harbinger is going to move forward with his Blink Stalker army, and is able to do some good damage, able to prove that he is very maneuverable. He's got a decent amount. He's got 7, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, let's just do this and find that, yes, he does have 7 Stalkers, and he's going to go into an expansion. So the 3-gate Blink Rush into an expansion, not so much a Blink Rush, to be honest. And he's going to go for sentries to establish himself at this point. Now, the Stalkers are going to fire upon these Hellions. He is going to blink and take down one of them. There is another that is going to be pretty vulnerable. However, he can force field these. No entree for... Well, one of them does get in, but that blink will cause them to do incredible damage. The Hellion is not as viable. However, let's see. A Banshee is on its way, and siege tanks have gone down for Zor, and a bunker as well. And he's going to continue to pump out some Marines from that build. Not exactly the 1-1-1 build, but still a very viable build. The Hellion pressure did not work out as intended. That's because Hellions just don't do that much against gateway units. Seizing this expansion will allow him a huge lead. If we take a look here, it seems that 6 units have been killed by Harbinger. Meanwhile, only 2 units have been killed. And I'd probably assume that that is either a... Well, probably both of them were Zealots. Now, Cloak is almost finished. Now, these Banshees may be very effective with harassment if they are used properly. However, a robotics facility is being made by Harbinger, so he will be able to see those if they do arrive at his base. Plus, he has Stalkers. They will not be as effective. Instead, it seems that Zor is going to keep that Banshee with his army as he pushes out with a large amount of Marines and tanks. This could be dangerous against such a build that Harbinger is going for. Tanks can be very viable. However, Harbinger is focusing a lot more on the micro of his army instead of in his base. He's going to focus fire down that Banshee and blink away his 2 Stalkers, specifically his Stalker that was weak. He got that unit out there that he needed to. Now, he can go, he does have a decent amount of Zealots here, and he is going for charge as well, and he's chrono boosting that charge, so he can do some damage against the Marines and the tanks as they move forward. However, it seems that Zor's going to go ahead and siege his tanks up. Siege tanks are pretty effective. This is a pretty good mech build. He needs to play it safe, maybe go for a starport instead of that robo, but with those... However, with that Banshee up, he does need that observer out. He could also put down some more gates. However, here it comes, the big move here. An observer is on its way out, but that Banshee has Cloak, but slowly over time, its Cloak will recede. Siege tanks sieging up. Well, charge has not completed yet, so these siege tanks will decimate these gateway units. Gonna focus instead on the siege tanks. Good blink there to destroy them. The siege tank's able to do some damage, but you may see a quick blink back. That SCV is going to try and do as much damage as possible. Blinking closer to the siege tanks once again. Now let's take a look. It seems as though more units were killed by Harbinger, so he will continue to do the damage that he needs to do. This Banshee is back, however. Will the Observer be there? Yes, the Observer will see it, and the Stalkers will focus it down as necessary. Now, let's see what Harbinger does next. He could go ahead and put down some more gates due to the fact that his expansion is up and running. He has the minerals for it, and it seems like Zor is just not playing at his best. His siege tanks, not as effective. He's going to go for an expansion. However, that's not the best timing. He needs to build up his army. No Raven. Yeah, basically no Raven. Interesting to see. He's actually going for a very risky double expansion. That's probably going to spell disaster for Zor. Seeing as how Harbinger does have a nice amount of army built up, he can go into full macro mode. Go ahead and put down 4 more gateways. I don't know the build. Oh no. Zor just did something pretty risky, hoping that it would work. Isn't going to go for that. Good for me, Harbinger says he has this well handled. He can go ahead, add on the Immortal that he wants. That's a pretty good choice, seeing as how he is going up against more of these siege tanks. I prefer to see a Starport and see Void Race and or some form of Warp Prism, but it's just too glassy right now. Those 4 gates operational, continuing, not even building probes at this point. Neither of them really spending too much in the forms of economy. However, Harbinger has such a high economy right now. He can afford to do this. He is actually almost saturated in this base. He'll eventually send some workers down to mine gas. Now Zor, what is Zor doing? As seizing this expansion, he does have some pretty good defense with these siege tanks. Very strong defenders, able to seize that. Now, will he go for a fast orbital command, or will he go for a planetary fortress? We shall see. I don't believe he has the engineering bay down Yes, he does, so he can go for that planetary fortress. Nope, he will go for the orbital command. Now, the second expansion is going to turn into an orbital command before being sent over. Essentially, because he is almost depleted here, that expansion is necessary. An immortal and plenty of zealots in there. This army is looking pretty good for Harbinger. He's a little bit ahead, though. Once again, let's take a look at the income. He is now ahead. However, Harbinger, or Zor, is going to continue to build up. He hasn't used as many scans as he did in this previous match. Probably sending them down for mules. Some medevacs now in place against this biomech build. Pretty good to use. There aren't as many stocks as you typically like to see. He doesn't have stim yet or concussive shell. Instead, it seems like Harbinger's going to go for thermal lance and get his Colossus out. Now, more Marines and Marauders on the way, so once this is finished, he may decide to come up with some sort of push. However, warp gates allow the Protoss army to macro up so much faster. One thing I don't like is that Harbinger's letting his money get too far ahead. Right now, he also has an observer over this army, so he is able to see all of Zor's units, realize that he does have a couple of tanks, but he's focusing more on the MMM side of it. Every once in a while, he will get a tank down since he can afford it. But I do love how low the minerals are for Harbinger in this case. He's even going to seize his third. Now there is a Banshee back there destroying the base. He did so much damage. That Banshee is going to go after this robotics bay. Oh wow, I missed that entirely. Great harassment. A Templar Archives was finished, so you may see a tech into High Templar, as well as Psystorm. That is huge if you think about it. Looking at it, he killed about 6 workers. He was able to safely maneuver his army back. That's pretty good use of micro there. Able to get that expansion, as now this third is almost complete. Having such a large advantage, this could spell disaster. Getting that third base, meanwhile, the orbital command is going to stay back and build more workers. He's not going to lift it off. A little silly there. Not exactly what I'd like to see. I'd like to see this lift off. Maybe go into, maybe not this lower base, but he can expand up into this northern section with his SCVs. This observer still seeing everything. Seeing that he's a little bit ahead, but a Viking is now out. Seeing as how Zor did notice that robotics bay. Now this is a good strategy, a warp prism. This can do so much damage in the late macro game. Now also a good move by Harbinger after making his forge to go ahead and build that photon cannon. He's actually got double forge upgrades, getting armor and weapons level 1. They are finished. Will he go for even more? However, there is a push incoming. Siege tank sieging in the middle of the map, seizing some form of map control. A big push is incoming between the two of them. Harbinger does have a couple of Archons deciding not to go for that Psystorm. Instead, realizing it would be better to go ahead and get Archons. 3 base Archons, better than 2 base Archons, I guess. I don't know for sure. 2 base Archon is a pretty good